Hey, it's Amanda here. Amanda Dodd, the certified clinical hypnotherapist here at Healing Beyond Trauma. Wanted to check in, see how everybody's doing, kind of check in myself a little bit. I'm still a little bit in that self-care mode today. Had a really good weekend, hung out with a friend, went to a new place, which is how you know you're not living in trauma. You're going out, you're exploring, you're doing new things, pushing your edges, right? I went to a place called Gypsy Grace and the Vintage Goat, and it is the cutest little shop ever. Picked up this badass candle that I absolutely love. It smells so good. So it's still in my mindset mode of self-care, having a little bit of electrolytes while I chat with you here. Somebody in the past life regression group brought up a really good point, and I kind of wanted to go over it with you guys and possibly give you a tool to work with for yourself too. So talking about past lives, healing, and trauma. And the question that kind of came out was, how does someone know when they're experiencing a trigger, if it is a past life kind of trauma coming up, something that could be released and worked on, or if it's this present lifetime? I've got a few answers for this. And then I'll also share like an experience that I had and kind of how I'm able to discern. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the nature of healing in itself, because the nature of healing is like a spiral. It's like a cascade. When you think of like an onion, there are those inner layers. And it is kind of natural to have that ebb and flow and synchronous kind of events coming up, where you look at something and you're like, oh, there's this kind of draw to this pattern or this thought or this thing. It may happen at a certain time of year, and it's got that kind of circular spiral kind of nature to it, and a certain amount of that is completely normal. And just the nature of how we learn and do things and how we grow. Nothing we do is really in a straight line. Not even when we learn to walk as toddlers. So I wanted to bring up that, the nature of healing is that it is sometimes in layers. How do you know if you've healed something but it keeps reoccurring, and you might be experiencing it different each time, or it may be exactly the same? And at that point, I would want to ask the question, have you perhaps fully gotten to the roots of the trauma? If you haven't gotten to the roots, then yes, it's going to keep coming up. You're gonna have a very circular experience. But I would also suggest that it would probably be happening at a much higher frequency if you haven't gotten to the roots of a challenge. Whereas if you have, and it's just the nature of healing, then the frequency would be a greater distance. It would happen fewer, and you might, rather than experience it again, perhaps just gain more insight on that part of your life or that time or that issue. And it wouldn't be a full-on in-your-face kind of issue. So it's not always all cut and dry. Trauma is an interesting creature, and sometimes we have experiences where it's a bit of both. Sometimes, yes, it is things that you've experienced in this life, and sometimes, yes, also, it's past lives coming into. So an example I'll give, when I first started not learning hypnotherapy, because I was already a couple of years in by that time. It was my second go around doing the certified clinical hypnotherapist education and coursework, where I was trading off with a peer, and we were both experiencing past life regression. And the goal of the assignment was to pick a current issue. And because I was a baby hypnotherapist coming out and doing the entrepreneur thing, I experienced every entrepreneurial challenge you could think of. Some that I really wasn't aware was a big challenge or had a lot of charge to it until it kind of came up, and it's like, oh, I'm uncomfortable doing this. Okay, got it. Now I know. So part of the assignment was to work with a peer and find a past life that was directly in line with the challenge that we were having. And so for me at that point, being just brand new to hypnotherapy, I learned very quickly I was uncomfortable with public speaking. And it wasn't just uncomfortable with public speaking, I could literally feel like it felt like my throat was closing. It felt like I couldn't breathe. I'd be having all these sensations while trying to speak. And it was just really uncomfortable. And and this is the key part, I couldn't find any reason that this would be happening because I've not had any bad experiences. I've not gone up on a stage and been laughed off or had a poor reception. There have been some minor traumas in terms of like one-on-one communication with people. It's natural. We all go through it. But never anything so big that it was like, oh God, this is a huge problem. I'm not going to be able to speak in public forever. That never happened, right? I see a couple of people popping on. So hey, nice to see you guys. Talking a little bit about healing and trauma, past life trauma and this life trauma. So going back to my story, I was working with a peer named Marilyn. She took me through one of my first past life regressions. And the scope was to find out what's going on with me when I'm trying to speak publicly, that I have all the sensations, all the things are happening. Someone has hit the brake and they're hitting the gas at the same time, and I'm just struggling. And so what happened that was really fascinating was I had my first experience. And at first it wasn't clear. I went back to this life. I can't even tell you where and when in time it was at this point because it's been a few years. But I was essentially a wife and a mother, and what was funny is the first experience I had of myself in that life was I was out in a field picking wildflowers, and it's like, yeah, that's a me thing. I would be doing that. That's exactly how I want to spend my time. And so within it, she asks, what are you doing? What are you experiencing? And I laugh and I giggle a little, and I'm like, I can hear some of the women from the town, and it's like a small town, and they're gossiping about like people's marriages and infidelities, and I'm just kind of giggling to myself because I know things that they don't, but I'm off to the side and I'm alone and I'm okay with that. And loving that, that peacefulness and independence on my own, which is also very much who I am now too. So some of those things, those characteristics come through to this life, which is always interesting. And so we fast forward to what was the main event that caused the issue with public speaking. And so I learned that I was a wife, I was a mother to 2 kids. Some of those people are also present in this lifetime, which was unexpected and surprising, comforting and a little weird all at the same time, because in past lives, people don't always have the same role or dynamic with you as you do in this lifetime. So that's something to just kind of know can happen and be a little uncomfortable for a minute, not for long. And so exploring all of the ins and outs of that, something had happened. I had a son who was a little bit older, and my sense was he was somewhere between like 20 and 21 years old. And he fell in love with a girl who was underage, and this girl was about 16. And her family came from a very predominant family. Hey, Dina. And so this predominant family didn't love that my more middle class, I guess you could say, family was there. And that my son wanted to take up with this girl who was slightly underage, and she loved him too. And so I was supporting that, and so was my spouse, but the other family did not. And they had another suitor in mind for their daughter. And so they made this allegation that my son had inappropriately taken advantage of this younger girl and potentially like raped and traumatized her. And although they had kept her hidden, the whole town basically took up with their pitchforks. And at that point, I was getting a little bit emotional in the past life regression because, like I said in the last video, when you're experiencing something yourself, all of your senses are in it. So for some people, they will get the whole audio video of the past life, and other people won't. It might just be one or two sensations or a general sense of things. You won't really know how it is for you until you go on the exploration and take the journey. For many people, though, it is the full sensory thing, and it kind of feels very real and like you're very present. You can feel your emotions. You're aware of what people around you are doing and thinking, their general energy. So it's kind of, it can be a lot in the moment, and a good hypnotherapist will know exactly how to dial it down. She'll dial it down, or he will dial it down to a way where you can experience it without being overwhelmed and be able to learn some lessons to get some more information. And so by that point, she started to dial it down for me so it could be a little more palpable. And what had happened was my son was essentially in the stockades, and I don't know when or where this was. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on that. I kind of wish we had. It felt like it was a little bit like Midwestern USA. And there was like the whole wooden stockade thing where you have your neck and your hands. And so I could see him in this position. And the townspeople were kind of gathered around. They didn't physically have pitchforks, but it was the same energy to it. And I was in the crowd, and I was so upset. I was just grieved that he was being blamed for something, and that the relationship he had was mutual, and it was very loving. They wanted to be together, they enjoyed each other, and he was gentle and he was honest. And so that was very upsetting for me. And so I had stood up amongst the townspeople, and I had begun to share his story. And wouldn't you know, it's no good deed unpunished sometimes, as they say. I actually got dragged up as well and hung. So I was put in a noose. And so what was occurring for me, and that I needed to learn from that past life, was sometimes if you don't pick your moments and you choose to stand up for someone in a public venue, it can have very real personal implications. And so essentially in that past life, I was hung, and I did die to hanging. And so in this life, as I was just beginning, I hadn't done much personal work yet, I'd stand up to speak, and I was feeling the sensations of the rope around my neck. And so literally I would be like swallowing, trying to work through the physical sensation, because something within, not my DNA per se, but within my biology, and I feel, of course, you know, when we're talking about past lives and reincarnation, most of it is from the area of the soul, from the area of the subconscious and the psyche. But the psyche, the subconscious, they rule the biology, they rule your physiology. There's a reason you have physical symptoms when you have something emotion underlying or going on. And so that was getting kicked up every time I would try to speak publicly. And it was very hard because some of my training, they really wanted me to get out there. They wanted me to do Facebook Lives. They wanted me to speak publicly, go to schools and libraries and social events and talk about coaching and hypnosis. And it's interesting, you can actually see the redness coming around my neck. So because we were learning and I didn't go back, I never fully released it. So there's actually like a physical, I don't know if you can see this, this is crazy. There's actually like a physical response still, because we were just learning, and the goal was to experience a past life. We didn't do the full work of actually clearing and releasing. For me, knowing was enough. It was like, oh, makes sense, got it. Now I know that there was, you know, something underlying. I'm not crazy, good to know. I can move forward, you know, and I'll just work through. So that is how past lives sometimes kind of kick up some dust, and you can know that something is in your present life. Now, a lady in the group, the Past Life Regressions group, had asked, how will I know if I'm experiencing trauma, if it's from this lifetime or a past lifetime? The way that you know is your experience. So the level of triggering, I guess, for best words, or the level that your autonomic nervous system is engaged is going to be your sign of, hey, is this a past life issue? Excuse me, or is this here and now? If you are experiencing a kind of trauma or a trigger or like a fear or phobia coming up and you feel it in your body beyond like the neck story of having a broken neck and the rope, the tightening sensation I'm talking about, like if you are sweating, if you've got heart palpitations, you feel anxiety, you've got like severe nausea to the point of like wanting to actually be sick, any of those fight flight mode kind of adrenaline surges that happen in the body, that would be a key indicator for me. So noticing how much of your energy gets sucked into it and is wrapped up in it, right? If it's a past life, there can be like the physical sensations like I talked about, but it wasn't something that was ruling me every single day. I wasn't getting up and going to school and thinking, oh God, I don't want to have to speak in public. It wasn't on my mind. I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't activated over it until I had to do it. And then it's like, oh, there's something here interesting. I have no idea what this is. And I'm so curious about that and wanting to get to like the roots of it. So trying to make that distinction can be challenging. And sometimes we don't make the distinction until we're on that journey already, until we're already kind of exploring the past lives and how they work, how you might have certain relationship dynamics in this present lifetime with people that you don't fully understand. I've had a couple, I don't want to name anybody, but I have had a couple, and so when I had checked on that as to why is there this jealousy within this relationship, I can't think of anything from this lifetime that would even make sense. And so we did again another past life regression. I worked with Marilyn once again. She was super supportive and sweet. And I found that there was a lifetime where I had the chance to choose who I would be courted and marry. And one of them actually plays a very different role in this lifetime. And so what happened was, out of the two suitors, both of them are present in this lifetime for me. And in this lifetime, I made a very clear choice because of the way that the relationships were and the roles and the dynamics. But there's always been an underlying jealousy from one person that I couldn't quite understand. And there's constantly this weird pattern of being presented with, oh, are you going to spend time with him? Or are you going to come hang out with me? And it's like, wait a minute, aren't we all adults here? Is there any reason we can't, enjoy and spend time together? Does it have to be a him or a me thing? And so that was actually really interesting too, to see that those kinds of patterns could kind of come up too. And again, it wasn't something though that I felt activated within my nervous system. It wasn't something I was thinking about or feeling. It was just at odd times when it was occurring. It was just like, what is that? And there was that underlying curiosity that comes up. So hopefully that helps you a little bit to understand the nature of healing, that yes, it is like a spiral, and there are times when you will revisit certain things with a different perspective or thought, or have an expanded view that you might not have had before. And then if it's coming up a lot, if it's got a lot of charge to it, then it's possible that whatever healing work you had done did not get to the root cause. And that's where I would recommend hypnosis, absolutely. Specifically, I love parts therapy. I am a huge parts therapy fan. You can learn so much in opening up dialogue with the subconscious. Things that you just can't access any other way. And you get to learn things about yourself, your experiences in this life, why you are who you are, why you do the things you do, and begin to actually make changes to have more choice. Am I doing the things I want to be doing? And then actively recruiting yourself and all of your resources to begin to make that happen. So if you're enjoying this talk, if you're interested in healing, past life regression, hypnotherapy, all things trauma, you're welcome to join the group and see things for yourself. I might pop over there and actually give a quick tool on another way to discern if something is this life or past life. It involves muscle testing and pendulum work. So if that interests you, pop on over. Otherwise, bye for now. Thanks for connecting today.